A patient is lying in bed. They had routine back surgery a week ago. The recovery's going fine. They're taking their pain medication exactly as prescribed. It's hour 8 since their last dose. Their skin starts to crawl. Heart rate spikes. A deep, bone-deep ache settles in. Not just the surgical pain coming back, but something worse. Something that feels like their entire nervous system is misfiring. They're sweating, nauseous. Their brain is screaming for something it's become chemically dependent on in just 7 days. They reach for the prescription bottle, OxyContin. The label is clear. Take 1 pill every 12 hours. It's only hour 8. They have 4 more hours of this before they're allowed to take the next dose. Desperate, they call their doctor. The doctor is confused. The pharmaceutical rep promised this pill provided 12 continuous hours of pain relief. That was the whole selling point. So the doctor calls Purdue Pharma, the company that makes OxyContin. The pill is wearing off early, they say. My patients are going into withdrawal. Should I prescribe it every 8 hours instead of 12? Purdue's executives look at the data. They already know the pill wears off at hour 8. Their own clinical trials showed it. It's not a surprise. It's not a defect. But if they admit it only lasts 8 hours, they lose their competitive edge. OxyContin becomes just another generic painkiller. If they maintain the 12-hour claim, they hold an exclusive multi-billion-dollar patent. So they give the sales reps a directive. Tell the doctors, never shorten the time between doses. If the patient is suffering at hour 8, don't give them the pill more often. Give them a stronger pill. When the patient crashes into withdrawal at hour 8, hit them with a massive dose of OxyContin to force them through to hour 12. They didn't fix the drug. They engineered an addiction loop. I'm James Tudor. This is the file on the 12-hour lie. To understand how a pharmaceutical company legally created an epidemic, you have to look at what was happening in medicine in the 1990s. For decades, doctors had been terrified of prescribing strong opioids. They knew narcotics were highly addictive. They reserved them almost exclusively for terminal cancer patients, people who were dying and for whom addiction wasn't a concern. But in 1996, something changed. A campaign swept through the medical community, declaring that pain was the 5th vital sign. Just like blood pressure or heart rate, doctors were told they had a moral obligation to treat pain aggressively. The campaign was heavily funded by pharmaceutical companies. Purdue Pharma saw an opening. They had a pill made of pure OxyContin, a chemical cousin to heroin. They called it OxyContin. It was incredibly powerful. But to make billions, they couldn't just sell it to dying cancer patients. They needed to sell it to people with chronic back pain, arthritis, sports injuries, everyday pain. To do that, they had to convince doctors, who'd spent their entire careers being cautious about opioids, that this specific opioid, unlike every other one in human history, wasn't addictive. They needed proof. Purdue found their proof in a 1980 edition of the New England Journal of Medicine. It wasn't a peer-reviewed study. It wasn't a clinical trial. It was a 5-sentence letter to the editor written by a doctor named Jane Porter and a researcher named Herschel Jick. The letter noted that out of roughly 12,000 hospitalized patients who'd been given small, carefully controlled doses of narcotics while lying in a hospital bed under medical supervision, only 4 developed signs of addiction. That's it. 5 sentences. An observation, not a study. But Purdue took that letter and weaponized it. They printed glossy brochures. They built massive ad campaigns. They trained thousands of sales reps to walk into doctors' offices and cite the Porter and Jick study as proof that the addiction rate for prescription opioids was less than 1%. It was a lie by omission. They took a paragraph about hospitalized patients under 24/7 supervision and used it to justify sending people home with bottles of pure oxycodone to take unsupervised in their living rooms. Doctors trusted it. Why wouldn't they? It was published in one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world. The other half of Purdue's lie was the pill itself. They claimed OxyContin was safe because of its special contin coating, a patented slow-release mechanism that made it different from every other painkiller on the market. The pitch was elegant. Traditional painkillers flood your system all at once. You get a euphoric high, then a crashing low. That roller coaster is what hooks people. OxyContin, they said, slowly released oxycodone into your bloodstream over exactly 12 hours. No peaks, no valleys, no addiction. But biology doesn't care about patents. Inside the human body, the coating didn't work as advertised. For many patients, the drug absorbed too quickly. Blood plasma levels of oxycodone would spike within a few hours, then start crashing by hour 8. This wasn't just pain returning. This was withdrawal. The brain's dopamine system, which had been flooded with opioids, was now in free fall. The patient would experience sweating, anxiety, nausea, and an overwhelming psychological craving for the next pill. By forcing patients to wait 12 hours between doses, Purdue guaranteed that millions of people spent 4 hours every single day in acute withdrawal. They were training people's brains to become addicted. When doctors started calling Purdue to report that their patients were showing signs of addiction, demanding pills early, displaying drug-seeking behavior, the company didn't pull back. They doubled down. Purdue deployed an army of highly paid sales reps, trained in a psychological tactic they called pseudo-addiction. If a doctor said, "My patient is begging for their pills early, I think they're addicted," the rep was trained to respond, "They're not addicted, doctor. They're just in pain. The fact that they're asking for more medication proves they need a higher dose." It was gaslighting at an industrial scale. Purdue incentivized this. They paid tens of millions in bonuses to reps who convinced doctors to prescribe the highest possible doses, 80 milligrams, 160 milligrams, doses that would knock out a horse. Internal memos later revealed that Purdue executives were tracking addiction rates in real time. They had maps showing which regions had the highest concentrations of addicted patients. They called these areas hyper-core markets. And instead of pulling the drug from those markets, they sent more sales reps. They weren't trying to stop an epidemic. They were optimizing one. The 12-hour lie is one of the most destructive corporate decisions in modern history. By the time the government finally started cracking down on OxyContin prescriptions years later, millions of Americans were already biologically dependent. When they couldn't get pills from their doctors anymore, they turned to the black market. They turned to heroin. And eventually, they turned to fentanyl. Since OxyContin was introduced in 1996, the opioid epidemic has killed over 500,000 Americans. Entire towns in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky were decimated. Families destroyed. Generations lost. Purdue Pharma made over $35 billion. The Sackler family, who owned the company, became one of the wealthiest families in the world. Their name was on museum wings at Harvard, the Louvre, the Met. They eventually faced thousands of lawsuits. Purdue pleaded guilty to federal criminal charges. The company was driven into bankruptcy. The Sacklers paid a settlement but were granted immunity from future civil claims. None of them went to jail. The damage is permanent. The story of OxyContin isn't about a medicine with unfortunate side effects. It's about a corporation that looked at the biological reality of human withdrawal, saw a business opportunity, and calculated that a 12-hour lie was worth 500,000 lives. I'm James Tudor. This is Empire Archives. Subscribe.